What is going on, my 2nd through 5th grade small group leaders? Welcome! This week, we are talking about the follow-up with Paul. And so Paul, as we left him in this last story, was actually blind and he couldn't see anything. He was just led to the town. And so this is going to be the follow-up to that, which is going to be Paul meeting Ananias, healing him, praying over him, and then scales falling off of the eyes of Paul to where he can see again, right? And so as we do this, we are just discovering this cool story about Paul. And so it's going to be good. But the big bottom line for today is, when have you faced a fear, or like God can help you face your fears, right? And so it's going to be this fear that we're actually going to focus on Ananias, where, this is Paul or Saul, who is a killer of Christians, right? And so he has to go pray over him. And so there's actually a moment in the Acts 9 when we're looking at the verse where Ananias is kind of like, are you sure, God, that you want me to do this? Even though the Lord is showing up to him in a vision. It's crazy. Anyway, as we dive into that, it's going to be fun going over our fears. And so this week, we're going to have a lot of fun doing fears and whatnot. This first one, what you want to do is just an opening activity, getting to know your kids, letting them know you, all of that stuff. But what you're doing is you're having them write something in the air to where the other people in the group are guessing what they're writing in the air. And so you can ask them a question like, what is your favorite food or something? And they have to write the actual letters in the air. And then the other people are trying to guess what it is that they're writing without doing any speaking from the person that's doing the writing, or that you asked the question to. So that one will be really fun. The next one, you have a total fear activity page. And what they're doing is they're trying to match the different fears with the descriptions. And so you have it looks like this, and it'll be cut in half. But there's all these different fears on here and all these different descriptions. They're supposed to cross them and match whichever one is supposed to be that fear. And when you do that, you have the actual explanation of the different ones and the answer sheet on your piece of paper that you can go through. And then you'll go off into a large group and hear on the actual story of Ananias and Paul or Saul and the healing of him. And how we can face our fears, because God will help us through those things. Then when you come back to your small group time, you'll have a little cube, and this little cube is a activity that helps expand the Bible verse and ask different questions on that. So what you're going to do is you're going to put them in 2 different teams, right? And when they're in 2 different teams, you're going to be competing for points, okay? So you'll go one team at a time. They'll be able to roll the cube, and if they answer the question on the cube correctly, then they get 5 points. If they do not answer it correctly, then you can go ahead and hand it over to the other team to see if they can get that same to get the correct answer for that same question. But if they get it right, because they're the second people that are trying for that answer, they can get 4 points instead of 5. Keep track of how many you get, and then we'll see which team wins in the end. So that's a really fun one. And then you have some good bullet points to hit at the bottom of that page. That's a 2-pager right there. For that activity. But go ahead and talk about how God can face our fears or God can help us face our fears in those moments, right? And then you have some really good discussion questions that go along after that. Then for your take a snapshot activity, which is what you're going to do is you're going to give them a piece of paper, and you're going to go ahead and have them write down when is a time that you have faced your fear. And if they need kind of some examples of I don't know, right? Then maybe you can talk about a fear that you've had before. It could be a roller coaster fear, it could be a heights fear, it could be a fear of spiders, could be a fear of snakes, anything, right? Talk about a personal time when you've had a fear of something and you've had to overcome it, or maybe you haven't overcome it yet, but you're working on it, or something like that, right? And so talk about that. They may get into something deeper, like losing a family member or something like that. If that does happen, it could have been something that just recently happened, right? And maybe they did lose their grandmother, and they're worried that their grandfather or something is going to pass soon or something too. So go through those fears, because that's what you guys as a small group are for. It's for loving on them and showing, hey, God is going to be with us no matter what, right? God can help us through this. Let's pray about it, all of that stuff too. Then you have a memory or a verse activity page. And what you're doing with this is you're looking up Psalm 56:3, which is very simple. And it says, when I'm afraid, I put my trust in you, right? It's a very simple verse. Have them try to memorize that really quick. And you can have them do an activity that goes along with this, and maybe even writing it upside down, like challenge them to try to write it upside down, because that's kind of what fears, if you're thinking about challenging and facing your fears, it's like flipping your fears upside down, right? If you flip them upside down, they don't seem as hard and as challenging to conquer, right? And so go through that, talk about the Psalm 53:6 verse with them, and go through a couple of questions that are on that page as well. That might help you with the discussion there. Then on your last one, your prayer and dismiss. You can also, with that last one, with the verse of the Psalm verse, you can actually go through those REAP pages too. Those REAP sheets are really good as just a practice for understanding how we can read, examine, apply, and pray these verses to our lives, right? And so if they wrote down a fear that they actually have in the activity before, you can be like, hey, like let's talk about how we can apply this verse to that fear that you already wrote down, right? You already thought of something. And so let's talk about how we can apply this verse to that fear and maybe overcome that this week or something like that, right? Now, again, that's going to depend on what fears they actually bring up and if they are, something that they need to conquer and things like that. So use your leader discretion at those moments as well. And then, of course, go ahead and pray with them. And as you're praying with them, if you want to start keeping a prayer journal, do that, right? And you can keep those journals, work on those prayer requests as they expand and keep going throughout the year, and work on those with the fears. Follow up with them the next week, right? When you open up that booklet, if you want to keep like a booklet or something, open that up and be like, hey, it sounds like you had a fear on this. Did you do anything this past week to work on that fear or something like that? And that's it for this week, guys. Thank you guys so much for all that you guys do. I love what you guys do. Y'all are awesome as we are diving into faith and understanding that we can have faith in God no matter what because of what we can see, right? We have faith in things that we can't see because of what we can see. And that's what we're focusing on this month. We love you guys. We'll see you in a little bit.